I am Debbie Gawrych, the Secretary General for the International Federation of Sport Climbing. And today we have a wonderful treat for you. Some really powerful women in the world of climbing as panelists together with me and our staff member, Tamaris. And what we're going to be doing is talking about some issues and concerns that are confronting women in climbing, some of the historical things that we've dealt with, and what the future holds. And so with that, I'm going to have Tamaris introduce for the panelists.
Hi, so I'm Tamaris Hayim. I'm Communications Officer for the IFSC. So I've been climbing a few years myself, which is how I got involved with this. So just to introduce our first couple of speakers today. So we have Shauna Coxsey. So of course, a Tokyo qualified athlete, 11-time World Cup gold medalist. And Shauna is also the founder of the Women's Climbing Sim, which I'm sure she can tell us more about in a little while. We have Lena Drapella, who is the IFSC's first female official photographer, as we announced. So we're very happy to have her on board for this season to shoot our events. And then we have Katja Vidmar, who is the first female route setter, now chief route setter. So I think as of Moscow 2019, she became the chief route setter. Pass over to Debbie to introduce the other speakers.
Thank you. Again, hi to Kako, she's joined us again. I'm the Secretary General of the International Federation of Sport Climbing. I've been involved with climbing in organizational wise since 1996, when my daughter and I started climbing in the local gym, and she decided to start competing. And at that time, I was more of an outdoor climber, but I wanted to be with her, and it was kind of hard to go outdoors where we lived. And so we did it together, and eventually I started volunteering and running competitions, and then became the president of USA Climbing. It was actually called something else, and I put together the business expertise that I have into climbing. There it goes two together. I've had a pretty long career in finance, and still was able to marry all of that together. And I'm so proud because I'm going to introduce Connie, or Constance Leitner now. She's on the board of USA Climbing, and she's also the mother of a really amazing climber. And later on, I want her to share some more things about what she's doing. But also, I'd like to introduce Tazu Mori. She is an amazing businesswoman. I am so impressed with who she is and how she's overcome stereotypes in her country and culture. She is single-handedly the reason why we have the amazing contract with Dentsu, because she believed in us. She's a mom of a climber, and she believed. She really knows an amazing amount about broadcasting, and I can't even say thank you enough, Tazu, for what you've done for us. And Takako is an amazing coach. I got to know her more through my daughter and her boyfriend as they would climb and compete and talk with her. And I've had a great opportunity to spend time with her at events. And I'm just really proud of the example that she sets for her team. And I don't know, there's a secret ingredient in Japan that I think we all want to find out. How come their team can be that deep and that good? Let's see. And who did I miss? Oh, who else? Is that it? Did I forget anybody? Is that 4 people? Yeah? Okay, good. All right. So, introductions. And now what I'd like to do is have each person go around and say if there's anything that they'd like to share that we haven't shared in the introduction that may be helpful for the people that are listening to us about them, what they do outside of climbing or in climbing. And then I'd like for each person to talk about 2 things. One would be briefly anything that they've seen that's been beneficial for the past year for women in climbing. And also briefly, any challenges that they see still linger or maybe are opportunities for growth in the future. And I'd like to start with Connie Clinton.
Oh, okay. I've been involved with USA Climbing since 2006. And actually, I guess IFSC since 2008, when my kid actually competed at his first continental or Pan American Championship. And then I think Ecuador in 2010. So yeah, I've been around, but I'm probably the only one on the panel that does not climb. So I enjoy belaying and traveling around and just being outside. This sport has brought me from a person that hated being outside growing up to actually enjoying the hikes and so many other new things. So I love it and love being a part of the growth of the sport.
Thank you. How about anything that you've seen that's been really positive in the past year for climbing?
The thing I think I love the most is after talking about how women talk too much, Japan responded by putting a woman over the Tokyo 2021 that's going to actually happen. I mean, that was a perfect response.
It was. Is there any challenge that you see that's happening currently that maybe is an opportunity for change?
Let me think on that one.
That's fine. You can come back around. We'll have a time later. But
Okay.
don't let it go if there's something that you can think
That's a
of.
deal.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Shauna next.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me. This is incredibly exciting, and it's amazing to be surrounded by so many powerful women, like you said, Debbie. For a little bit more background on me, I've been climbing for a really long time, 24 years. Of my 28, I started at quite a young age and actually got into climbing through seeing Catherine Destiville, a female French climber, soloing on the TV. And I said, that's what I want to do. So not kind of the conventional route of family. Taking me to a gym or anything like that. I just saw it on the TV and decided that's what I wanted to do and have never looked back. And I started competing at the age of 7. And I remember back then that it was quite rare to see women at the climbing gym. It was quite rare to chat to women who were doing it professionally. And there were very few female climbers around 2 decades ago, and that has totally changed, and we've seen such a transformation of our sport becoming so inclusive and open and accessible as well. And I think that there's a lot of work to do within that. To answer your second question, Debbie, of what can we do, I think there's definitely more to be done and we need to keep working on it. But at the same time, we've seen female route setters coming in and like being a head route setter at events, which is amazing. And then, yeah, congratulations to Lena being announced as the first female IFSC photographer. So and we're seeing that influx of women into the sport starting to like trickle through into huge roles now, which is incredibly exciting. But I do think there's still work to be done and we need to keep focusing on that.
Thank you. Well, since you've talked about route setters, why don't we talk to Katya next? Katya, is there anything else you'd like to share about your background in climbing, outside of climbing, and something positive? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been climbing for more than 25 years now. So, and similar like Shauna, once I started, I never looked back. Just all my life is about climbing. And I started as a competitor. And I worked as a coach with young kids and competitors later, and then I got into route setting more. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it's just the passion that I have, and I just keep going with this. And I'm really happy that it's changing, that it's becoming more normal to be a female route setter. It's not like a big deal. But I think it's a process, and there's no shortcut. So we just need more time, and I think more women will get into it. And yeah, I think it's going in the right direction. And also, since we're all girls here now, but I kind of had always had the support from the guys that I worked with. So I'm really happy that the climbing community is so open to these things. Otherwise, I think I would never get here.
So what about any challenges that you see right now? What do you see?
For root setting and girls,
anything that you in climbing, what do you see?
Challenges would be, I think, like for root setting in particular, maybe to get more girls into it, it will take a little more time, and I think it's a process, and maybe we need to work on the career path to be more clear and maybe easier for girls to decide this as well, because it's, I don't know, if you're at certain age and maybe you want to have a family, maybe it's not the easiest choice you make and say, okay, I'm gonna go with this career. So something like this, and like otherwise it's like in any other profession, I guess. If you want to be successful, it's there's a lot of hard work behind it, and confidence and believing in yourself. So these things, and self-drive and passion.
Yes, thank you. I think we're going to call on Takako next, so if she drops off, that at least she's been able to share. So Takako, can you say anything? Maybe explain a little bit more about what you do or how you coach, or anything about yourself in or out of climbing, and then something that you see has been positive for women in climbing for this past year.
Hi. Yes. My name is Takako. I'm from Japan National Climbing Team. I am a very lucky person, being a coach for very good, amazing people. I've been involved with the team since 2009, when I was living in China, and when there was the World Championship in China. Since then, I've been working for the team, and since back in 2017, I came back to Japan after living abroad for 17 years and being part of the Japan National Climbing Team as a coach. I am very lucky to be here.
Thank you. All right, well, do you see any challenges for women in climbing? She's off. Okay. So Tazu, we can start with you. If you want to start with the challenges that you see, and then maybe go back and talk some more about yourself, that would be great.
Okay. Challenges. I think Takako is back.
She's back up.
I think. Oh, probably bad connection.
Oh, there she is. Okay. Takako, can you hear me?
Yes, I am very sorry that I keep disappearing. I'm actually in Ehime Prefecture in Japan, the west side of Japan, for the training camp. And I'm very sorry for the poor connection being here.
Are there any challenges you see right now for women in climbing? Maybe in Japan or elsewhere?
I'm sorry, can you say again?
Are there any challenges you see for women in climbing right now?
I think climbing is a sport which is very diverse and well connected. There are routes given to climbers, and the solution could be different for bigger persons, smaller person, women and men. So in any given routes or problems, they can come up with their own solution. So there's no disadvantage in general as a women, as a climber, compared to other sports, I think. But recently, there are more powerful routes on the competitions, and that requires a lot of dynamic and and big moves that leads to injury. Because
I think what she was saying, it leads to injury. And Katya, after we finish this, if you want to come back and talk about the evolution of route setting in terms of dynamic moves, that might be interesting too. But Tazu, why don't you go ahead and tell us maybe a little bit more about yourself,
Yeah.
how you got into climbing, and something that's positive that you see for women in climbing.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Tazu. I'm working with IFSC as a broadcasting and marketing rights agent since 2013. I think it's been like almost 8 years. Yeah. So and until as Debbie mentioned, my son is a climber. He's now 15 years old, and he started climbing when he was 6. And that's how I got to know about climbing. I just didn't know anything about climbing until then. And I just happened to live very close to the base camp at UG's gym, and that's how he just really fell in love with climbing, and I just had a chance to see the Akio and all the top climbers climbing there and having competition there. And I was really fascinated by climbing, and it's just, and I just found out there's a World Cup going on, and we have YouTube broadcasting, and I just wondered, maybe why don't they, just broadcast it on TV? And because Akio was winning many, competitions, and it's really was really, I couldn't believe that such things, wonderful things happening and people don't know anything about it. So that's how I started, and I just contacted the IFSC, and and I started from a small deal of TV, and and that's how I just came here. And I've been working for 8 years since then.
Tazu, I'd like to hear what you think is been really positive for women in climbing, but I have to tell you, I actually kind of have a tear in my eye, because it's really amazing to see what you did structurally from a business standpoint. I so appreciate how you did it, because you believed in us when the value wasn't known, and you asked for a piece of the action. Smart businesswoman.
I'm just lucky.
Like a work of art, and you were so smart to do that. I'm so proud of you. Even though we needed to pay you for that, and so when it became big, you were already there, and because you believed in us and you opened the door, we were able to do all of this. You are an unsung hero, and I just so appreciate it. Thank you. So what do you see in terms of what has been positive for women in climbing now?
Well, like Takako said, in Japan, probably thanks to Akio and her great performances, and I don't see much it used to be like we had more exposure for both women climbers, and it's like a more recent, after Tomoa won the world championship, and we have now equal kind of exposure on TV, but I don't really see any negative things about climbing, especially climbing for athletes. Takako-san, what do you think?
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you, Tazu. There's not so much division between men and women in climbing in Japan.
Maybe that's what makes your team so strong. It might be. Thank you. Thank you both for sharing. Lena, would you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you see as positive for women in climbing?
Yes, of course. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you for having me on this panel and on the IFSC team in general. So my name is Lena. I am Polish, but currently based in the UK. I'm a climber myself, although can't say I've climbed for 20 years over Shauna or Katya. Though I can agree with climbing changing my life immediately. I have started climbing probably 6 or 7 years ago, and it has flipped my life pretty much upside down from day one. My pathway was probably slightly different to an average climber, as I started with trad climbing, then moved to sport climbing, and now I'm photographing competitions, so it's probably reversed to most. But yeah, I'm really, really pleased to be here, and so I'm quite new to this team, but I'm not so new to photography. I have been photographing for the same amount of time as climbing. And I've had the pleasure to photograph some of the women's events, such as the Women's Bouldering Festival or Women Rock in Ulasai, or attend the Women's Climbing Symposium, which Shauna organizes. And I think that kind of partially answers your next question with what's positive that's happening within the climbing world for females. For me, those events matter massively. I have been introduced to climbing by men, and my first years of climbing were surrounded by men more than women. And until attending those events as both participant and a photographer, I had no idea how many inspiring, strong women are out there. And yeah, I think that's something worth noting for sure.
Thank you for sharing that. What do you see are challenges?
I think, as Shauna mentioned, there is a lot of work going on, and there's definitely progress happening. And as, again, Tazu and Takako said, the imbalance between men and female within climbing is definitely smaller than within other sports. Saying like with, equal money prizes for the competitors, or even, having those conversations, what we're doing now is pretty incredible. But yes, there is still some work to be done for sure. And Tazu, you mentioned the coverage, and I don't have the data on like what's the coverage for male and female athletes, but there are probably still some subtle small changes that might need addressing.
Thank you. Tamaris, how about you?
Hi. So I started climbing probably the same time as Lena, 7 years ago, and just completely fell in love with it straight away. So it was when I was at university. So once I left university, I wanted it was to do with climbing. I didn't care what, as long as it was climbing. So I walked straight into a role at the British Mountaineering Council. So that's one of our member federations. Spent a year there. Got to try lots of new styles of climbing whilst I was there. Met lots of people and got to go to, as you said about all the different climbing events, Lena, I got to go to so many different events. And what I love about climbing is that the community is one big family. That you go to these events and you meet these people, and it's like you've known them your whole life. Sport climbing community is like no other. And then I finished the role there and ended up at the International Climbing, and it still doesn't really feel real. But yeah, I'm just very happy to be combining my love of what I do day to day.
Thank you. What do you see as something that's been positive for women, or is something positive for women in climbing right now?
Something positive would still have to be the community, because like I say, it's like one big family. Everyone you. If you're not sure about something, then they will offer you advice. If you want to try something new, then they'll to help you. So that's
what
definitely what I would say.
What about a challenge that we have?
Challenge is how women into climbing and into the roles behind climbing. So as Katja said, how do we get more women into route setting? How do we promote those opportunities and actually encourage women to take up those opportunities? So it's on and off the wall. How do we encourage women to actually get involved in our sport?
Thank you. I already told you about how I got into this, but I'd like to start with what I think is really positive is I see not only the IFSC, but the IOC has given a lot of room and attention to gender equality, more diversity, not just gender, but race and cultural. I'd even say that looking at the refugee programs that they have, looking at there can be diversity in terms of affluence or even political structure in your country. So as many ways as you can think, what I see, this is all about a system of power and power basis. And that kind of goes to women. This whole thing is so near and dear to my heart. I wrote a book that came out in 2002 called The 7 Aspects of Sisterhood, and it was has a personality model, and it was really about, in some ways, like women have a lot of unique qualities, but when you really get down to it as human beings, we're women, but we can have personalities that aren't typical women. And what happened for me was that I had a very atypical career. I started out as a speech pathologist and audiologist, and I started doing it, and I said, I don't really enjoy this. I'm supposed to get a master's. And I love it in theory, but in the practice, it wasn't right for me. So I switched gears and went in and got an MBA, totally different. And my husband told me then, of course, we've been married a long time. He said, you don't have the mindset for business because you're not tough enough. You're about helping people. And anybody who knows me knows that is not true. I am totally tough enough. Leading a lot of different organizations, making sure the board structure is right. And sometimes, Connie, I'll tell you about what happened early in the days for me with forming USA Climbing. That just wasn't true. But what he did is he challenged me, because if you tell me I can't do something, I'm gonna do it, right? And so I hate accounting. I got A's in accounting. He's an accountant. He was an accountant before he retired. And so I started out as an industrial engineer for a bank. And they taught me about process engineering. I didn't even have a degree, and I learned this. Then I became an IT project manager on the trading floor. I became a bond trader. I was the first full-service broker for a bank. And all of that, and I retired early to help raise my kids. I stayed home, and because my husband had a big career, we couldn't both have one. And I wrote a book. I reformulated myself. I did a lot of volunteering. That's kind of when I fell into climbing. I also competed I was a really good runner and triathlete and a tennis player too. And I used what I knew from that plus business to help at the volunteer level. And so what brings me to where I am now? What do I see that's good? I see more opportunity and visibility because of some women that have gone before me that mentored me. And then I also think that I've trailblazed things because I don't know that I can't do that. The very first international meeting I went to, as the president of USA Climbing and on the new management committee of, I don't even know what we were, UIAA Climbing, there was a man who told me in India that I wasn't allowed to speak. He said I was new and I was a woman and I wasn't supposed to speak until I was told to. He didn't know who he was talking to. Wow, he just lit a fire under me. This was a long time. It was like 2003 or 4. And I was like, oh, wow. And so everybody knows there's the classic break between UIA and UIA Climbing. Eventually we became the IFSC. But that conversation and some of the ways that I was ostracized gave me all kinds of, I mean, he gave me the door, he opened the door, I said, well, the gloves are off now. And so I was the right person at the right time to meet Marco to be able to do this. But I told Marco at that time, we break away. It isn't about the revolution. I can do a revolution. What's really hard is building the infrastructure. So you can create the fire, but then what do you do next? And that takes a long, long view. It takes a lot of planning, and it takes building this. And women are very important with that. And I can tell you in every I mean, I look at all the sexual harassment now and I think about what I dealt with on the trading floor. I mean, men would pinch my butts and say, I mean, they called me Little Debbie Snack Cakes. That's why professionally I would go as Debra. I didn't want to be Little Debbie. It was just put downs like, well, I mean, you know, Connie's shaking her head. Yeah, it was rough. And I didn't even think it was rough because I wanted to succeed. So you just go, well, hey. And I think we are better as women having to go through these obstacles. And whether it's women, whether it's race, whether it's sexual preference, whatever it is, really at the core, there's no difference. And yes, obviously there are differences. And so really, if there's some way, my whole book was about how do we get to non-judgment. And that's what I would like to do. And it's really hard because we all have judgment. We all come that way. And so I think as women, we want to be at the table in positions of power.
But Debbie, I think that a lot of things that you just said present some of the challenges that exist. The fact that there are gender expectations or those preconceived ideas, even the thought that anyone could think, because it's conventional knowledge, not just your husband, that you can't really care about helping people and be a strong, tough leader at the same time. The thought that you can't climb 9A, 9B, and that's been incredible accomplishments over the last year or two of all the women that have broken to those grades. The fact that you can't be strong enough to do that and wear beautiful fingernail polish at the same time and be dainty. I mean, those.
Megan Martin is a great example of that. I just love her to pieces, you know?
Yeah, but just breaking down some of those stereotypes, we can do whatever, that we don't fit into one box is important.
Yes, and Connie, how do we do that? Because, like, and I'm going to ask that question. How can we do that? But the other thing is, what I will say is, I have been given a lot of privilege. I worked hard for it, but to be in the position I'm in. But it wasn't easy, even in our organization. And I still look around and I go, I think we have prize money equity. And so the challenge for me is, at the top level, there are very few women that are presidents of international sport federations. Very few women that are secretary generals, because when there is money and there is power, and United States is probably a little bit less like this because it's all volunteer stuff. I know, I agree, but less. But when there's money and power, unfortunately, a man is going to take it. And that's just like, it's not almost like a God-given right. It's an entitlement thing. And I break down stereotypes all the time, but I don't get it because I have been minimized even in our organization, and it's just like accepted. And people will come up to me and say, why did you let them do that? I go, because I got to pick my battles, It's hard. So I'm just keeping it real here so that, and that's not putting anything down, but saying there's a lot of opportunities at this bureaucratic level that I think that we haven't even begun to break that glass ceiling. Yeah. So what's positive is that we can have this discussion and openly have it, and that things like in Japan just happened, I agree. That I will tell you this, my presence in our organization and working directly with Marco and other people have changed the way they see it. I don't really think, for the most part, Marco sees me as much as a woman, he sees me as an American and as almost a family member, as a friend, which is a plus and a minus, because he'll treat me more like a sister than, like the professional. But that happens with familiarity. But I am open to, questions, open to questions, to comments on how do we begin to support women in these positions of power. in climbing or anywhere actually?
I think a start is highlighting a lot of the female successes in breaking it down. Katja should be out front and center even more and celebrated so that other women see her and know that they can do the same thing. Whether it's the role that you're doing, actually putting us out there, being successful in doing it, the more that we do that and we're visible and we're actually highlighted, I think the more that it can encourage other people to just see themselves in those positions.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
having equal representation within the media, and like with seeing your heroes, like for younger athletes or younger female who would want to become route setters, seeing Katja in that position would be incredibly inspiring, right?
yeah, I think it's important to have an example. Like if it wasn't me in particular, I would say, yeah, it should be really spotlighted and so on. But I prefer to stay in the backstage and not being under the spotlight so much. But yeah, I think it is important, and that's why I also do these kind of things and discussions and some interviews and so on. I also did some route setting courses only for girls, or in some cases there were more girls than men joining the group, and it was really cool to see. And there was also an event in Japan in Pump, Rock Queens, that was only girls climbing, and I was the chief setter there, and it was a really, really cool experience. So yeah, I support this kind of things, and I think I hope that in some time there will be no discussion so much about gender, but like just, okay, you're a route setter, it's just like that it's more normal to do this.
Yeah, I agree with what you just said as well, that the gender is not the important issues here. I think like one of the things that IFSC, what would be great to see is celebrating women for their achievements and not for their gender. And just showing that, you know, it's not that we're females, that what we've done is amazing. It's because it's amazing, period. And yeah, I think that would be one step forward.
Yeah, but I think we're not there yet, so it's important to encourage this kind of things for now.
So how do you think we could encourage more women to get involved in coaching?
In Japan, we have a team of 12 in our coaching team, and we are lucky to have 4 incredible women in our team. So we have quite a few coaches who are female, and Asian countries are diverse. We have different cultures, different religions and people, and climate, and so on and so forth. And I realized I found my use in when we had an Asian championship in Iran, where all the isolation was completely strictly separated between men and women. So for female athletes lounge, we needed female coaches for sure to be there. And also a lot of area was respectfully divided. And not only being as a coach as same as other male coaches, but we need more diverse people who could support the team for different reasons. So I think it's good to have, teammate. And we have a female head coach for youth team. So I think it's important to have diverse group in our working team.
So So speaking about diversity, within the IFSC, we have the Route Setter Diversity Programme. So I think it's every 2 years, 2 positions are awarded on the international circuit to route setters from less represented backgrounds. So in 2020, 2 positions were awarded to women. So it's great that we have that platform available, how to actually get women involved in route setting in the first place, because obviously to take up the roles of an international route setter, you'd have to have somewhere to become a route setter in the first place. You need to learn the skills. So how do we get women involved at the first level?
That was something that I wanted to throw something out, and Tamara, this is also maybe a to-do list for us, is it would be interesting because we're doing athlete videos that we want to promote. But I also think it would be interesting to interview Katya and talk about it, and then maybe even start like, I don't know, Route Setter 101 or whatever you would do to get in. How would you get into it? You know, go to your gym, talk to someone or whatever it would be, because we have a way of, we're looking at creating an academy with the IFSC on training. And this isn't just like to become an IFSC certified route setter. This is like for like video-based training, so that anybody in the world, like a gym, could say, oh, I'm going to take the IFSC course and teach people how to route set, you know, basic, like not for events, just like in a gym. How do you get started? Do you have to like be strong? Do you have to climb, you know, like a high level, or can you do that? Do you have to like all of those kinds of things? And it would be really interesting to interview Katya and have her, and then maybe interview somebody else like Tom Brown or somebody, and have them on there too. So that's just an idea. That's an aside. And then I'll wait for my question after you finish this with the questions.
Debbie, it would be neat if you guys could almost take the show on the road, like to different federations, whether it's to Kako or Katya actually going in, and it's like, okay, let's start with Katya. We have a lot of different, whatever female route setters we have in the US. If you guys are interested in setting at a higher level to learn the skills so that you can be selected, whether it's for nationals or even eventually prep, so you could do internationally setting, to basically have almost a forum in some of the different countries or federations where they can bring them together and actually see, first of all, the different women route setters from around that country. Mm-hmm. And then also start teaching them the higher level skills so that they can, that would bring some exposure. Or to Kako, clearly they have a machine that's running that's awesome. So if it's going to federations and getting federations to like have that discussion, bring together different female coaches, no matter what level they're on, talking about best practices, ways to build up programs, or things to do to make them stronger. I think number one, it would highlight the fact that we do have some there, but it may even pique their interest in realizing they can go to higher levels.
Yeah, that's really awesome. We were thinking about using the climbing channel that I've been working on to do a platform to do that. And one of the problems, shooting a video is really expensive, and we haven't had the funding for it, but you know, I'm beginning to do that. But if we do like this kind of forum where it's more live but virtual, and then maybe when we can get there, we can be there, or a combination, and we can record these kind of sessions. And then, you know, hey, here, you know, we'll have this recorded. You can see this anytime. Because what we want to do is have archived video that's actually available for all. The beginning would be free. You know, eventually we might have to charge for people that are getting paid to do this and use the videos. But I think that's a great idea, Connie. Thanks for sharing it.
What I would say as well is, from running the Women's Climbing Symposium, what we've seen is bringing people together. Often you don't know what the questions are and how to answer them. So it's, in a way, getting people together and starting that conversation. So the people who are in coaching, the people who are in route setting, how did they get into it? Where did they come from? How did they start? Asking those questions, because ultimately we don't know the answers to them. And accepting that, I think, is a really important first step to then go and seek out, how do we create those spaces for those conversations to happen, where we can learn that information and use it to make the future better. And that's definitely something we've done with WCS. You know, at the first event we had 60 women, and it was kind of an event born out of trying for me to try and help other women to overcome barriers that they were facing. But I was quite ignorant about. I hadn't even realized. I was so oblivious to these barriers that they were facing. So we got women together, we started to communicate about it, we started to find out what was important to them, what they wanted to learn, and that's just grown and developed over the years. And our mission is to now connect, develop, and inspire. And we always come back to this mission. And I think we had to start the event in order to learn what it was we wanted to do. And it almost feels like we're at that stage now where we need to get the people who are doing it together and figure out what it is we need to kind of put in place to be able to implement kind of a more successful pathway for the future.
Shauna, what I really appreciate about what you were doing is one of the things I wanted to ask a question about or highlight is that here you are, you're a real-time climber, you're an Olympian hopeful, or you'll be in the Olympics, you know. So you're climbing, and that is, let's just say it's a role, and you're also a board member, but you're also leveraging that for a bigger purpose. And I think that's really incredible. I wanted to highlight that. And that's basically what Connie's saying, is taking it on the road, is leveraging what we're already doing and just like talking about it. And I love this idea of networking. If there's some way that we could more formalize that, support what you already have created, and then let's take that idea of this networking concept and then bring it in to have like CWA, Climbing Wall Association in the United States, you know, they have, it's about gyms and people who have walls, but they bring in all of these other things that are part of it. And so the women's symposium could be not even just women, because we're not really doing that in other places. But I think having this identity helps in the beginning. It's just, it could be really powerful across the board. So I think that's a really interesting idea.
Shauna needs to be out front and center teaching women what it means to be a professional climber and all the things that come with it that's expected on and off the wall.
Yeah.
Because you've always done, you've done a great job at being a professional. Yeah. Like I said, on and off the wall. It's not just climbing and doing so well, but it's how you handle yourself. It's social media. It's role models. It's figuring out how to bring more people in.
I actually wanted to add earlier that we're talking about route setters and coaches, but we also need to consider the life of professional athletes. And I think that that's something that I was definitely naive about, and I had no idea how all-encompassing it would be. And yes, I've chosen to be a board member at the IFSC as part of the Athlete Commission, and also with the Women's Climbing Symposium, and I'm a trustee for the charity Climbers Against Cancer too. So I've chosen to kind of work in other areas. But yeah, I was really unaware that there would be opportunities to do that. And then also understanding kind of what my values are and how I want to be as an athlete and how I want to represent the sport. I think there's definitely more to be done in that area as well to support professional athletes and professional female athletes within climbing, because it's quite new. It's not something that has a long history, and with the growth of our sport kind of happening during my professional career, it's been quite organic for me. But you know, the younger athletes that are stepping into that realm now, I think it is very daunting and overwhelming. Yeah, I mean, it's extremely exciting at the same time for sure, but I think it's something we need to consider within this discussion as well.
It probably helps for the younger athletes to have you as a role model too.
International Olympic Committee, they have a platform for Olympians called Athlete 365. So maybe we almost need something like that specific for climbing, so that the athletes on the scene now can kind of like inspire and educate the younger athletes coming onto the scene. Maybe that's something we need to look into.
Don't create more work for us.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And it can be the same for all different roles. So we've got the athletes, route setters, coaches, board members, whatever, climbing a set of resources to make that happen.
Yeah, it sounds incredible and really exciting.
So we are in an Olympic year, and Shauna, since you already kind of opened up the door to talk about some things that you're doing, one of the questions was, and I think it'd be interesting to talk about with the group, is how is sport climbing positioned in the Olympic sport community with regards to gender equity and probably diversity in general? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting topic, and almost one that it's hard for me to answer in some respects because I'm very much absorbed in the Olympic process and with the games coming up. So yeah, to try and think about it from a broader scale, I think it seems really obvious that we're represented incredibly well as a sport at the Olympic Games with in terms of equality from a gender perspective, having the same number of male and female athletes competing, and then at IFSC events having the same prize money and the same number of boulders and routes, of course, and speed climbing is the same number of athletes in finals. So yeah, I think from that perspective, it's really important that that's been recognized. And then also with regards to having like 2 athletes represented on the board, the International Federation. So yeah, it's important and it's happening. And the fact that these discussions are taking place, I think, is incredible. And the fact that we're all very able to recognize that there's a lot more that needs to be done and not just stopping to celebrate what we've done, which I do think is important. We need to say, yes, this is happening. We need to put these women out there and say, look at what we're doing, but this is where we want to go. Like, this is where we see our future. And I think it is easy to just stop and kind of acknowledge success and that be that. But the fact that we're moving forward and constantly discussing what's next is what excites me more than the fact that we look good on paper. So yeah, I think it's good, but it can be better, and it is going to be better.
Thank you. I've been taking some notes because there's some really good action items that are coming out of this. And I don't want to lose them. So my commitment to you is that I will work with Tamaris and Marco Vetteretti to look at, what we can do, what's actionable. Even if we can take 1 or 2 steps forward, I think it would be important. What other topics did we have? Let's see. How could sport climbing help fight stereotypes that are ingrained in a country's culture?
It's a big question.
I know, it's huge.
From an athlete perspective, I mean, I can answer from competing across many different countries I think I've been on the international circuit for almost a decade now, and it's been interesting to see what is ingrained in culture. And Takako earlier mentioned like how things are different in different countries from your perspective as well. And I think that it's, as an athlete, you see it firsthand almost in some respects. But I think the fact that we are represented equally, and that's in the media as well, I think that's really important. So yeah, it's just kind of making sure that as the federation, we're doing everything that we can to represent athletes equally, to have that equal number of athletes in events. And again, the prize money I think is really important too. But yeah, I think it does come down to the media and the role that they play as well, and also the role that the IFSC play with regards to kind of showcasing the events and discussing them, and being also aware of what those stereotypes are and what is ingrained within the cultures. Because I think that that's something that can be hard as an athlete as well, to be unaware of that and then go to a country and have no idea what's happening or what's going on. So I wonder if there's a role that the IFSC could play or the event organizers could play to make people aware and to help break down those barriers as well.
I think just with spreading climbing around and make it wider is on itself a good tool to reach this equality better. And because I don't know, the environment, as far as I know it, or how I know it, is very open and more than the society outside of climbing. So I think like once you get into climbing, it doesn't matter if you're male, female, old, young, weak, strong. I don't know. It's just I think how more of a person you are and how much you love climbing, and it can also show that being strong doesn't just mean having a big biceps, but it comes in many forms. We can see strong women climbing something that looks easy, and it's actually really hard. And this is also the power that comes through it in a different way. And I think climbing is just a beautiful example of this. And if it becomes more popular, I think this energy will spread.
Something
you're right. Oh, go ahead, Connie.
Something you just said is key. You said once people get into climbing, they realize two different climbers can care less what your demographic differences are.
Yeah,
they're more concerned with how can we tackle this problem, and they work together once you get into it. But to be honest, climbing is one of the least diverse sports, to be honest, in Olympics, especially racially. And so the question becomes, especially in the US, but the question becomes, how do you get them into it to begin with, to realize that the openness is actually there? Because there's actually some apprehension with even getting into it. Because, I mean, if you're in a sport where you're not represented and it's very few, a lot of people are hesitant to even try it. It's even worse when it comes to outside climbing. Mm-hmm. That gap, I mean, I think it increases substantially higher. And I think that's a question, and one of the first hills to climb is how to just get them there. Because if we can get them there to realize how awesome the sport is, I agree. I think they would be hooked, and they would just blend and bond with everybody and realize exactly what you just said.
Mm-hmm. I love what you just said, Connie, and I'm well aware of some of that barrier to entry or whatever it is. I mean, you see that, I used to see that, I think it's in skiing, and you see it in different states of the US. But one of the things that's key with this is once you actually do the activity, the differences melt away. And that is one of the things I was going to say from what Katya said too. I have had my own prejudices come up in the course of this international work that I'm doing. And it was in the form of fear of Russia and China. Because as a young child, I was told the communists were going to come and get me. And so it was weird because now I'm on the board with Alexander Berezensky and Mr. Lee, and we were having a discussion, and one of them was older and one of them was similar age to me. And I said, yeah, I have this fear. I used to think you guys were like the boogeymen. And I realized they've got marital problems, they've got money problems, they've got kid problems. You know, we're all human beings, right? And the funny thing is Mr. Lee told me, yeah, when I was a kid, we were told the Americans were going to come and take us away. And it was like it all fell apart and melted for me. What a relief. And so I think you're right, Connie. I think eliminating barriers to entry, and that's one of the things we're trying to do by increasing the number of member federations, by increasing presence in Africa, that we're really, you know, doing that in the island countries. And in the US, I mean, I don't know. I don't have the answer to what that is, but I'm totally interested in supporting that. And if you have some ideas of things that we can do on the IFSC level to help that, let me know. You know, we'll see what we can do to work that out. It might be a good joint initiative for us. So I think that I used to say, because of the work I do, leadership and training and development, I used to say if everybody would either go on a camping trip outward bound or do something, climb, that would challenge themselves beyond what they know, and if they go travel, but especially to a third world country, the world would be a whole different place. Because you can't be unchanged when you've seen this. When you go to an island country in the US and you go beyond, or not in the US, but like St. John's, the Bahamas and you go outside of the resort and see how people are living that are actually working in the resort, it changes your perspective forever. That was a lesson that my kids never got past. They said, wow, that's where they're living? Yeah, that's where they're living to support this. You see the unfairness, the inequities. And so I think this, the fact that we get to do this is incredible. What we do with it is also incredible. And I go back to Shauna, your platform, if we can put elements of networking that are also about maybe discussions about barriers to entry. And it may be different in the US than it is in Rwanda, than it is in Japan or Thailand, but there's barriers of entries everywhere. And so, yeah, go ahead.
Connie, I think what your son Kai Leitner is doing is absolutely incredible with his not-for-profit Climbing for Change, and I think it's important to acknowledge that, and also that we can sit here and have these discussions about how people can get into climbing and break down that barrier. But I think it'd be naive to just assume that climbing doesn't have kind of any issues. And I think it's important to recognize that we need to put effort into keeping people in climbing as well. And I've talked to Kai at length about this too. And I think, we can't just open that door and say, off you go. We need to support people into the sport and to stay with that sport and find that love and find that passion. And whether it's diversity or income or gender or the list of different reasons that prevent people and that are barriers to just coming into the sport as well, they do remain, I think, in our sport as well. Yes, as much as we can celebrate what we're doing to increase people coming in, we do need to acknowledge that we need to support people within the sport as well as bringing people in. And I think I just want to say it again, what Kai's doing is absolutely amazing.
So every since from the moment he decided to start it, we probably take, and I say we because he puts things on my schedule, but we probably take at least 5 or 6 just almost consultation calls each week, working with different organizations and businesses because of exactly what you just said. Kai is dead set on having a program where you bring someone in once or twice a month is pointless if you don't have some way to actually sustain it. Yeah. And so that's been the key thing. And everyone that talks about what they want to do, he wants to know, okay, how are we going to put, or even she starts strategizing ways to make sure that there are some things there so that 1 year from now, 2 years from now, it'll be increasing opposed to like a one-off program or something that you did just to say you check that box.
Yeah.
So what are some specific things that he's found have worked, Connie?
One thing, well, a couple of things. He has the grant programs that he started. He has a belief that the gym is a segue to really getting them hooked in climbing. That if they could start at the gym, then they'd actually move to whether it's outdoor or competitions. If you can get them into outdoors or into competitions, they will be hooked. And so helping them with even funding for getting into it. And then working with gyms, because literally we've had people ask, yeah, but in this area is too expensive. And so Kai has picked up the phone and called the actual gyms in the area and asked, what programs do you have or how are you accommodating? And a lot of those gyms that initially things weren't publicized, they told us, send us a list. Let them come to you, send it to us. We promise we will work with them to actually make that something that happens. The other thing is coming up with structures for gyms to be able to sustain it. Because the one project he just opened with it's in a rec center in Atlanta. It's basically Atlanta, Georgia. It's in the rec center, but it was more important to make sure they were partnered with the gym. The gym has agreed to actually give them some passes to be able to go. And Kai said, okay, if they want to get into climbing, come back to us, whether it's competitions or outdoors, a trip, and they can't afford it, and we will find the funding to help them get out. And basically helping them initially, his thought process is help these new programs, support them for the first couple of years while you're helping them build an infrastructure to keep it going. And one of those ideas has been like adding $1, asking your members, will they add $1 to their membership monthly? And a lot of them is agreed, but that's raised a lot of money, but it puts money aside because now the program that they have, that's how they plan on paying for them to go outside with the others, with the outdoor trips, or even do some of the competitions that they would not have been able to afford. I've spent a heck of a lot of money over the years sending him to those comps. The average person can't do it.
Right.
So locally, there has to be some structure, and if people are willing to donate to it to help, that $1 a month at gyms has went a long way for how they, being able to start that up and build it, and again, sustain it.
That's a great idea, Connie. Really love that. Well, I don't know if we're over time, Tamaris. Do we need to like close it up now?
We can carry on for a little bit longer if everyone's got a bit more to say.
Ideas that are shared, and again, I want to pursue the networking, the leveraging, and it doesn't matter to me whether Kai's climbing for all or climbing for women. It doesn't matter. I think it's really important to also work with existing programs and see what we can do to help them be more successful and in turn help the global community. So this is really exciting for me to learn more about, both Shauna, your program, and Kai's program, Connie. I think it might be helpful just to have some maybe closing remarks of what we'd like to do next step-wise. And if we could go around and share that, then I'll write these down and let's see what we can do. Anybody want to start?
I'm happy to go first. I would just say that I think it's like essential that these conversations happen to create change, and there's a lot within this that we're learning, and we're massively accepting that there's work to be done. And I think that was said at the beginning, and to reiterate that throughout, and the fact that we are looking for solutions and trying to be better as a sport, I think is incredible. And yeah, like you said, Debbie, there's a lot of organizations that are already out there. There's people already doing things, and I think there's many ideas floating around, but it is important to support those that exist and for our community to be working together to solve problems, and not kind of working against each other, because I think we see that as well when there's not an openness and also not a dialogue between people. So being able to support what people are already doing and shout about that and work together, and then also go away and work on the ideas discussed to create change and to make our sport better. I think there's multiple different things that can be done, and for sure it is work and it is time, but there's such a positive attitude towards wanting to create that change. I think it's something that can be done, and I think it will be done. So yeah, I'm massively grateful to be part of this and to hear the conversations that are happening. So thank you to everybody here.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I could go second. Why not? I think we have all agreed that there is a historical inequality within both the coverage and maybe even perceived abilities between men and women, and like coverage with people of color as well. And I believe that to fight that perception and to make it equal, one of the steps could be just giving more space for more coverage or airtime and publicity with photos and headlines for both people of color and women. I think that would be one of the steps that we could take.
Lena, is that something that you feel like you have the leeway to do, or is there something that you would need to do to feel like that you're supported in that?
I mean, I try to support similar causes with photographing women's events. I think within the IFSC, I would be photographing equally men and women, not just going to focus on the ladies, but do show an equal coverage. But, it's just a representation as well. Like, people want to feel represented. And that, maybe it will be the next, image banner for the press release, which would have a person of color or a woman on a headline, or even the subtle changes make a big difference.
Yeah, so here's something that I think maybe be helpful is, as a photographer, the athletes for sure are the big draw, but when you can photograph Takako with an athlete, when you can photograph Katya there, when you can photograph women or men of color that may not be athletes, they're participating somehow.
Yes,
in the audience, right? When we can show our sport being inclusive, then those images help people say, wow, that's somebody that looks like me. Maybe I'm okay to do this, right? And these are subtle things, but they're important. Because I've been in situations where I don't feel comfortable because I'm an older woman, right? I don't see any women, it's like, they're all young, they're 20 years old and skinny, can I do this? I don't know. So if I see a woman in there like a little, like a woman, I'm like, all right, I can do this, so we want to see. And that's what I love about climbing. You can start climbing when you're 80 years old. I mean, I'm not saying you're going to climb like Shauna, but I mean, you can do whatever you want. I mean, it's fun. So I think that's something subtle that you could do.
But I agree with that representation, not only within the athletes, but also within the coaches and route setters. And even, photographers, maybe it's just me at the moment, but even yesterday I found a statistic which showed that only 9% of women are, only 9% of commercial photographers are women, which is, a pretty ridiculous percentage. So like showing that representation, not only within the athletes, but within the other roles as well, especially like route setting, which until now has been perceived as definitely male dominated profession, and coaching the same.
Yeah. Okay, great.
So, if I can just follow on from Lena's comments. So myself and Marco Vetteretti took over the IFSC communications last year, and what we're working to do is make sure anything we put out is representative of all cultures, genders. We want to give equal representation to paraclimbing. So this that we're working on, and obviously it's a work in progress. We've got a lot of work to do, but so of course now we have you on board, and we have our new pool of here. So this is what we'll be working to do during this season and the coming seasons, just to make sure that we give equal representation to people, because climbing is for everyone. That's what we always say.
Awesome, thank you. Who wants to go next?
Hi. I'm gonna go next. I'm a little bit like Katya. Like I like to stay behind the curtain and directing from there kind of person. But I'm very happy to be here today, exchanging ideas and speak up my mind with incredible people like all of you. And I think this is a great, and especially culturally in Japan, women are a little bit one step behind the men kind of things. So this kind of opportunities made me come up to this place and speak in my mind is one step forward for our culture, I hope. And it can create a bit of awareness. Oh, okay, she can do it, and I might be able to do it in the future, sort of things. So I am happy to be here, and really, and I want to keep exchanging ideas and continue conversations and creating values together with you, and hopefully this can lead for younger generations to come and follow. So thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to go next?
Okay, I will go next. I would also just like to thank everyone to invite me here and to talk to you guys. And I think, like in general, every small thing we do is important. Like even if it's a discussion, or we make how we display climbing, or how we talk about it, or how we act when we are in the gym, or like every small thing, and it will slowly make a big change, I guess, because I think like we cannot just switch the button and everything will be as we want tomorrow. So we just make small steps and hope for the best.
Thank you. Connie, were you going to go?
Sure.
Okay.
I think it's awesome that you guys even put this together. I think that in order for equity to even possibly be achieved, it has to become a cultural thing, not just in certain areas. It means whether it's in the photographers that we have, whether it's in the route setters or the coaches or the athletes, just across the board, age, whether it's age, even ability. If you want to talk about all the different lines, I think it has to become a culture across everything, the marketing across everything, to start promoting, encouraging, celebrating different levels of diversity. When we see people actually breaking barriers, doing it and doing it well, I think that that's something that hopefully, and I'm glad this is a great first step. We're trying to make that a cultural change across the board instead of one or two initiatives. So thank you.
Agree. Yeah, thank you, Connie. Totally agree. Tazu?
Yes, I totally agree with Connie. I've been thinking about my son, when he goes to climbing gym, he just, climbs with like 60 years old man and like 40 something women. And that's just group of people is really diverse. Diversity, and and I just in this discussion, I just realized in such inclusivity is really great value of climbing, and as a marketing like a partner of IFSC, I think we need to promote this value through in any we need to promote this value. That's what I thought.
Thank you. I feel like today I was a balloon that was being able to be blown up from all of you. And what I love is collaborating. I'm so grateful that I don't have all the answers. Sometimes I don't have any, but I can bring people together and listen. And I'm a worker bee. I can help implement it and then bring more people together. And really, truly, I have goosebumps because this has been incredible for me. This is way more than what I even thought it would be. And so thank you for being willing to do this. Thank you for really showing up, because you gave us really good actionable items. And I'm super excited about some of the initiatives that I'm doing. And now this balloon's really gotten bigger because I can see things differently and help. So you can be sure, Shauna, I'm calling on you. I'm going to call on you, Connie and Kai, because I want to see how we can integrate this in this initiative that I'm trying to get launched as soon as I get the IT stuff done. And I'll be informing all of you about it. So I'm not going to let this drop. I'll put some thoughts together and then I'll get your email sent back out. Thank you so much, everyone. And Tamris, is there anything you want to say in closing?
Yeah, just thank you all for taking part. So as we said, this is just the first step. We have a lot of work to do. And as Shauna said before, it's about accepting that we have work to do and taking those steps to make a change in our sport. So yeah, looking forward to working to make that change happen.
And one of the things I'd like to say, because it's helpful to kind of, when we're talking about next steps, we're talking about them kind of theoretically, but I'm going to make something concrete. I would like to have a revisit of this conversation, and I'm not sure whether before the Olympics or after the Olympics, but let's see, once the season starts, what's transpired, what, if there's been any shifts or changes. And I promise we won't take too much time, Shauna, as you'll be competing and Katja's probably going to be setting, but I think it would be fun. Is everybody willing to do that? Would you rather do it after the Olympics or before? After? Shauna goes, yes. Okay.
After, ideally.
All right,
Yeah.
so we'll do it after the Olympics.
Busy at the moment.
Okay. All right. So we'll do it after the Olympics. And so now we know that we're going to be getting back together. And meanwhile, I'm going to be working on some things to help the organization. And feel free to contact me or Tamaris or Marco Vetteretti if something else comes up, or anybody in the organization for that matter. But at least we'll have the context for it. So I'd love to hear from you. Thank you. And I'll look forward to hearing what happens for all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.